All right, I think we are ready and good to go. Tony's keeping an eye on Facebook for me, so hello to our Facebook audience. Hello to everybody on Zoom, and absolutely hello to everybody in the space here with us. Ethan, if you don't mind, you can close that door just a little bit, not always so people don't feel like we're shutting them out, but just so we don't hear any background noise, I greatly appreciate it. Man, y'all, this has been a busy day. I don't know how many of you all know, but the Artist Drive Conference or Summit rather, is in Winston-Salem, and I just led a innovation tour of our entrepreneurial spaces in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And we're actually supposed to end where we are right now at Flywheel with the tour. You know how these things go as an event planner. I know how these things go. The tour definitely took longer than we had anticipated, primarily because people are really interested about the entrepreneurial culture here in Winston-Salem. So as we visited the Small Business Center and Bailey Power Plant, particularly Access and Spark and Mixer, people are just engaged on, they had a chance to see the art space school on our journey. It was a walking tour. So it just, we didn't make it to 500 West, but great news. I'm gonna announce it to y'all first because Hustle always gets tea first. Great news, because we did not make it to 500 West, the Artist Drive Summit has made a commitment, because they're here in Winston-Salem for 3 years, and this is year 2 of 3. So the Artist Drive Summit has committed to making 500 West 5th, particularly Flywheel Space, was one of our partners for Marketing Outside the Box, a key focal point during their summit next year. And this year, they may even get a virtual video to share with not just those that was on the tour with us, but all of the attendees of the summit, both virtual and in person. So that's pretty awesome. Anyways, I've been running my mouth, and I recognize that half of you probably don't know who I am. So I am Magalia Smith. I serve as I'm trying to make sure I look at everybody. I serve as the executive director for Hustle Winston-Salem. We are a nonprofit organization that's focused on inclusive entrepreneurship. We've been in existence technically since 2016, but in reality since 2015. And Marketing Outside the Box is one of the programs that we've been doing since about 2018, 17. I never seem to remember 18. Since 2018, we've been doing Marketing Outside the Box, and it's because in 2017, we surveyed our local community of entrepreneurs and small business owners and asked them about their greatest need, and marketing rose to the top. And even today, even though it's more informal than a survey, when we speak to entrepreneurs and small business owners, marketing continues to rise to the top as one of the greatest needs for entrepreneurs and small business owners. So we do Marketing Outside the Box, which started initially in 2018 as a monthly program, then grew into a bi-weekly program, and before we knew it, it was a weekly program. So we've been doing it weekly for about 2 years now. And we do it in partnership with the Forsyth Tech Small Business Center, as well as with Flywheel Co-working, which for those that are here with us, this is the space we're in. And for those on Zoom, this is the background that you're seeing. However, I share that with you all, particularly this time around, because in September, you're going to see some changes in our cadence to Marketing Outside the Box. Just met with our partners at the Small Business Center, and we think to be the most impactful, we're going to reverse and go back to once a month as people try to get back accustomed to coming out in person and things of that nature. So you'll have Marketing Outside the Box the 3rd Wednesday of every month, starting in September. Now, next month, we're still every week. Next month, we're still every week, and I'll tell you our topic for next month in just a second. But what that means is that each session, we're still gonna make sure it's bite sizes, but the way Marketing Outside the Box works now is that we give you a topic and we break it up every week to span the month. What it means now, so those of you who have been with us for a while, you may have recalled that back in April, I believe we announced that we were shifting from lecture style, which primarily has been the method of Marketing Outside the Box, to workshop style. What that means, starting in September, Marketing Outside the Box will truly be workshop style, truly be more impactful. And I'm sharing all of that because These are things for hustle that we want to make sure we see. First of all, like I said, we've been teaching marketing outside the box since 2018. We've probably touched almost every marketing topic under the sun during that time, honestly. So if you need any of the previous videos, any of the previous presentations, we still have access to all of that. We can always send that to you. And then we also offer one-on-one marketing coaching. So does the Small Business Center. So we know that you have the resources in that area. But we really want to start to see some of that stuff put into practice in your businesses. We pour a lot of information into entrepreneurs and small businesses, and we just hope and trust that you are doing the work from what we're sharing. So what you'll start to see in September shifting is we'll be doing the work in the sessions. And you'll see a little bit of that next month as well. So next month, our topic, I don't have the title yet. I think it's viral videos, but don't quote me. But what we are doing is we are creating content in the session. You will leave every session with some video content done. So what that means is you want to bring your phone is probably the best, but definitely a laptop to those sessions, and you'll get that communication in your email. So whether it's on TikTok, whether it's on Instagram, which are the primary two when we think about videos, but even potentially Facebook. Each session you'll leave with a video about your business that you can share on social media. Okay, that's the whole purpose of what we'll be doing next month during our sessions. And then you'll start to see, instead of every week in the month of September, based on our topic, really impactful workshops once a month, third Wednesday of every month. Okay, I'm sharing that, put in your brains now. You'll see it in writing, but the more you hear it, the more you know it, okay? Yep.
What time will each one?
The time will not change, 12:30 to 1:30. So that's still an hour. So we'll be getting to work. They will be workshops. Focus on work. They will be workshops, but your business and you will be better for it. Trust me, okay? And I think I've already mentioned how you can find any of our previous sessions, but if I did not, you can visit our Facebook page, it's Hustle Winston-Salem. And if you go to the video section of our page, I mean, we've been so kind since the pandemic where they're in categories for you. So you will see 2020 videos, 2021 videos, and 2022 videos of marketing outside the box. And if you need any of the company presentations with those videos, you just send us an email, hustlewsinfo@gmail.com. Tony or Mendez, if you all can put that email address in the chat and on Facebook for me, I'd appreciate it. Send us an email for any presentation, we can send it to you. And any session that we've held pre-March 2020, which is when the pandemic hit us here, any session that we held prior to that, we don't have a video because we were in this building, in this space, not recording. We still have the presentations. So you can still get access to all the presentations literally from 2018 to now. And you can have one-on-one sessions with us to see how some of that information has updated. For example, we did one on, marketing to different generations. Since the pandemic, some of those generations have changed a bit. Gen Z and millennials aren't the same. So we're happy to have one-on-ones a little bit to kind of see what's shifted, but the foundation of each of those presentations are still the same, okay? I know I spent some time on that, but I think it's important that you all understand the shift and understand the resources that's available to you. I mentioned that you can find those videos on Facebook. You can also find them on our YouTube page. So if you don't have a Facebook account or if Facebook isn't your thing, you can still find it on our YouTube page, okay? So we typically do not have enough time to do introductions. Selfishly, I always introduce myself. But we encourage that you use the chat function on Zoom, and those on Facebook, join the Zoom or come to us in person. But if you're determined to stay on Facebook, use the chat feature, comment section under the video to introduce yourself. We will go back and check you out. And those in the room, we encourage that you stay a little after and network with each other if your schedule allows to introduce yourself, okay? So this series, we're talking about storytelling for entrepreneurs, which I know you know, because why else would you be here, right? So it's like, Magley, duh, we know why we're here. And let me share my screen and we'll jump right into it. And apologies, any questions for me based off of all the information I just shared? Nope, okay. So this is week 3 of a 4-week series of storytelling for entrepreneurs. I won't go too much into what we've covered the last 2 weeks, but just know that the first week we focused on the elevator pitch, and we went through some steps around that. And again, watch the previous videos if you missed it. The second week, last week, we talked about the origin story, and today our focus is the pitch deck. As you see me go through the slides, these are just the slides from the previous presentations. And I showed examples of what typically people do with the elevator pitch, showed you 2 different versions. Then I went through what I was suggesting to look at it from a storytelling lens for your business. So again, we're not going through it today, but definitely go back and watch the previous presentation. And you'll receive this full presentation as an attendee. You will receive it. Last week, we talked about the origin story, and we went through each of these on the storyboard on the best way to tell your origin story for your business. So again, not going back to it today, but definitely check it out and let us know if you have questions. If I have time, I'll remind you of some other programs that we have that you can come and have one-on-one sessions with us during those programs about these topics. But today we're talking about the pitch deck, which is the 3rd form of telling a story as an entrepreneur. Most of us, I think, when we think of entrepreneurs and we think of pitch decks, we're thinking about seeking funds, which is accurate. How many of you are familiar with the pitch deck, or rather not familiar with the pitch deck? And Tony, you have to tell me, since I can't see if somebody's raising their hand, you have to tell me from your screen, okay? You are or you're not? You're shaking your head to say you're not familiar? No. Okay. Because I couldn't remember how I asked the question. So the pitch deck is really a key presentation that tells the story of how a company meets its unique need, and generally what they're seeking, what they're asking for to grow and build their business. It's really the #1 way that most entrepreneurs raise funds for their business. Now, from investors, that is, raise funds for their business from investors. Before we move on, I have a disclaimer. I have a disclaimer that I need to disclose to everybody in the room. I, Magali Yasin, am not a fan of the pitch deck. I want to tell you that before I start teaching it to you. I do not like them. I think it puts us in a box. So there's a small side of me that's still a creative. And pitch decks are very structured in a lot of ways, and we'll try to dispel some of that today. But just because I don't like pitch decks does not mean that they're an important form of storytelling, and I will not rob you of making sure that you know that option for your business. So I'm gonna still give it to you straight. I'm gonna still give it to you with the information you need to know, but I just think you should know you're learning this from somebody who do not like pitch decks, okay? Okay, so like I said, I'm here to help you grow and succeed. So I want to equip you with everything you need to make sure that excuse me, to make sure that happens. Excuse me. Whew, okay. So here we are, the pitch deck. So ideally, and before I start talking about this screen, I want to share, ideally the pitch deck should take your audience, the investor, whomever you're talking to, whether you're talking to one person or 1 million people in a room, whatever it is, it should take the audience on a journey. Okay, that's the whole idea. That's what we're talking about with storytelling. To take them on that journey, you do it by sharing a compelling story about your business, not literally one particular story, but the story of your business. And we'll talk about several ways to do that today. Generally speaking, the pitch deck will cover key points like your problem, your solution, and your team. And you'll hear me talk about the team a lot today. But you have to find a way to do it when we're looking at it from a storytelling lens and not just spitting out a pitch deck. Because if you go on YouTube and watch some pitch decks, if you go to some accelerator programs, there's a formula to this. And again, as non-traditional entrepreneurs, I'll say that, as a non-traditional entrepreneurial organization, would you say that? Right. We're a non-traditional entrepreneurial organization. I don't particularly believe that we follow the model, okay? So I just want to point that out. But so even with those key points that I'm going to share with you that needs to be in your pitch deck, that you're looking at it from a storytelling point of view, you don't want to kill interest by just boiling it down to those things. So you want to some of the titles that you will see me give that should be in your pitch deck, get creative with it. Really sell it to people, okay? I can't remember who said this when I took my notes, but someone once said that the elevator pitch, which was the version that we talked about the first week. Someone once said that the elevator pitch opens the door for you, but your success or failure in raising enough money to make your business fly is going to depend largely on the pitch deck. So if you're looking to get money for your business, the pitch deck is probably the most compelling storytelling form that we're talking about in this series, okay? So not necessarily just looking for the customer, but looking for the investor, okay? So let's look at some ways to tell your story via the pitch deck. Today I'm gonna try, let me see what time is it? Yes, today I'm gonna speed through, I'm gonna speed through 3 different like title areas. So the classic options, which we'll start with the classic options. There's 3 classic options that I will go through with you. The crucial elements will be even shorter. I mean, I'll just kind of touch 3 parts. That's the second way that I think you can do your pitch deck. As long as these crucial elements are in there, you should be fine. And then I'll do the simple formula, which is generally what most pitch decks follow, but I'll do it from a storytelling lens rather than just what other folks would train you on the pitch deck, okay? So the classic options. First is the hero story that you see here. And remember, when we're talking about the classic options that I'm about to give you here, think of your pitch deck the same way you think about a good book. Think about it just that way. You want some action, you want some excitement, you want to talk about the successes, and you want to talk about the failures. When you're reading a book, you go through that journey. Same thing with your pitch deck. You're creating a story. They say in 10 slides, but again, that's that cookie cutter version that I don't agree with. So the hero's journey is one of the first classic ways that you can do a pitch deck. Hopefully you're reading through 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm not going to read through them because we're all adults and I believe we can all read when you receive this and it's on the screen. But what I want you to know about the hero's journey, this is a tale of why you decided to launch your startup. So when if you're using this version of a pitch deck, your whole story on your pitch deck, and the pitch deck is literally a presentation, y'all. It's literally a presentation, whether you decide to use Microsoft PowerPoint, whether you decide, what am I on? Canva, whether you decide to use Canva, whether you decide to print out 10 sheets of paper and flip through it, that's what you're talking about when I say presentation. So you're telling why you decided to launch your startup in this version, the hero's journey. It's a personal version of it. It explains where you have come from and what is motivating you. It's the best format for innovative concept pitches. So like if you have something that's innovative, this is probably the one that I recommend you follow. If you have a completely new product, or if your business is a charity, this is also what I recommend that you follow, the hero's journey. And that's because it creates a bond between you and your audience. And especially when you're thinking about charities, you want to create that bond. So you will highlight your experience and you will showcase your passion for your business. That's going to be important if you follow this. Again, I'm not going to read 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you can multitask, you read it as I was talking. And if not, please be sure, because this is just simple. There's nothing very specific to it. It's just a formula that helps guide you with your slides, with the hero's journey, okay? Next, we're gonna go through the customer's tale. Same concept, not reading it to you, so feel free to read it as I'm talking. The customer's tale version, and again, we're still under the classics. These are the classic ways to try to do your pitch deck. This story focuses on your product from the customer's perspective. So remember, the first one was why you started your business. This version is from the customer's perspective. It's an excellent way for you to secure startup funding since it shows the investor that you know your market, and it highlights the value of your products to real people, or your service to real people. So the customer tale works very well for those of you pitching consumer goods. So if that's your business, if you have consumer goods, I recommend that you do the customer's tale. If you have a tech startup, I recommend that you do the customer's tale. So think about your type of business. If you fit into these categories, If you're going the classic route, then I recommend that you do the customer's tale. And that's because it demonstrates your advantage over competitors. Okay, it really just shows this is why I'm better than the others, to be honest, to be frank. So that's why I think it's really good for consumer goods and tech startups, okay? And then the last one under the classic, did my screen freeze? There we go. The last one under the classic options is the industry's point of view. Okay, again, I keep saying it, read it on your own so you can understand the various things. It's pretty much summing up what I'm saying. That's all it is. So this is the tell of your industry and why it needs you. If you take this point of view with telling your story through a pitch deck, you are focused on talking about the industry and why your business is needed in the industry. Not why you started the business like you did with the hero story, with the hero's journey, not your customer's perspective, but why the industry as a whole needs you and your business in it. That's the path that you're taking with the industry's point of view. This story shows investors that your startup, that your business has a role to play, and it demonstrates how well you know your market and your current industry trends. So those are the things you're going to focus, that you're going to put in if you do the industry's point of view. And I believe that this format works especially well for those pitching data and for those that we consider groundbreaking startups. So typically, in my opinion, although I hate to use this example, medicine, if you're in the space of medicine, because that's a lot of where we see groundbreaking things happen, you have a startup in medicine, this is probably the route you want to go, okay? You have a question? I feel like you have a question. Okay. And again, similar to how the customer's tale really demonstrates their advantage over your competitors, the industry's point of view, it demonstrates your competitive edge. It truly does. It talks about how your business fits into a wider industry. And you know, you'll hear a little bit about this in the next segment, but it talks about how you fit into this bigger picture of the world, right? And this, and it really talks about the size of your potential customer base. So you're really focused on, is there really that many people that need this? And you're going to focus on that if you do this particular pitch deck model. You're focused on that, okay? So those are the three classic, the hero's journey, the customer's tale, and then the industry point of view. So take some time when you receive this presentation to read through it, capture that email address if you have follow-up questions, hustlewsinfo@gmail.com, and let us know if you have more questions about those three in particular. I'm intentionally speeding through these because I really want to get to the last one that I'm talking about, so you have all of those pieces. So the second set of options is what I call the crucial options. That means no matter what format you take, how you decide to present, if for some reason or another you don't even have your deck with you, but you need to talk to an investor and share some things, there are crucial elements that I think needs to be in your pitch deck. So no matter what, these things need to be in there. It's three main things. And I'll kind of go through them quickly. So the first one that you want to make sure is communicated is your team. Tell the story of your team in a way that gives people confidence in your skills and your capabilities. As you see on the screen, that investors choose a team more than they choose a product or service. So take time crucial, this is crucial to your pitch deck.
Excuse me.
Yes.
You said investors.
Investors choose a team more than they choose a product or business or product or service, excuse me. So they choose a team more. People believe in people. So tell the story of your team. Take the time in your pitch deck, tell them who you are, who your partner is, or your employee might be. I mean, if you have a team of 50, don't talk about 50 people, but just, keep people that founded your company or helped you in this journey and why they're crucial. Help them believe in those people enough to invest in your business. So that's the story you're telling, okay? Crucial. That's the very first crucial thing. Second crucial thing that you want to make sure that is in your deck is the total addressable market, which really is just the size of the market that you're targeting. It's just the size of the market that you're targeting. And let me move this on my screen so I can walk through this clearly for you. But sorry, on my Zoom. But particularly in the beginning of when you're starting a company or starting your business, venture firms or investors, as you all may know, they're taking a big risk. They're investing thousands of dollars, in some rare cases, millions of dollars into you and into your idea, right? So they're taking a big risk. So they need to know, they need to believe that there's a possibility of your company growing exponentially. They need to see that. And when you get time to really look at this, it's very simple, but I think it does a great job of breaking it down for you. Your total addressable market or total available market, some people call it. Think about it as the size of the universe. It's how big is that's how they're thinking about how big is this universe? How big is this world that you're saying your product or service exists in, right? So that they need to know that. That's what's important to them. Everything else in there matters. We're not going to talk about it today, but what you're doing, what you're making sure is crucial in that pitch deck is that they understand this is how big a market is for people who likes bows, right? This is how big the market is for people who like fluffy pillows for their cats. This matters to this universe. So you think about it in terms of that. So no matter what it is that your business is, you think they need to understand how big that available market is. Now, again, we're not getting into your served available market and your target market. All of that ties into your total addressable market. But what's crucial for the investor that you forget anything else, they need to understand in that pitch deck when you're telling your story, how big that universe is. Because a lot of people are smart, even if you forget to say something, they can quickly figure out, wow, if that's the audience, there's definitely going to be some growth there, right? So if nothing else, if you do no other calculations, you want to make sure you get to that. And again, this simple graphic, when you go back and look at it, very helpful when you're working on that particular slide or understanding of your business and how you pitch it, okay, in your story, because numbers matter, okay? And then the third crucial thing, click here, all right? The third crucial thing that you want to make sure is that your business is financially viable, which really literally just means, is this a feasible business? Does it make sense financially? And how you do that, of course, numbers, but you also want to focus on how you're different from your competitors, right? Because if you come into a market that is feasible, like it makes sense, but there are 50 other companies doing the exact same thing, the exact same way that you're doing it, why would an investor listen to your story and invest? So think about it in that particular way, okay? You really want to show that your business is financially viable. So when we're looking at the crucial elements, again, one, you want to talk about your team. That's crucial element number one. Make sure that it's in there. Don't miss that. No matter what you forget in that slide deck. Don't forget your team. Don't forget to talk about your total addressable market. And don't forget to show how you are financially viable, how you're better than your competitors, and why it makes financial sense for them, okay? And honestly, if you paid attention to everything I said, it's not that different from these three. It's not that different from the hero's journey, the customer's tale, or the industry's point of view. It's just a matter of how people understand stories, how people understand what works best for you, how you're presenting the pitch deck, okay? So what I want to spend, I'm doing good on time. What I want to spend the rest of our time on as we think about the pitch deck is really what I call a simple formula, okay? So with the simple formula, I feel like when in doubt with pitch decks, if the three classic stories just isn't for you, you're just like, oh, I can't really get this into a whole deck. If the three simple elements or the three crucial elements, it's just not your thing, it's just not functioning for you, and you just need a better way to think of this, I hope this final option helps you. Now, I will say, this final option follows essentially what most investors and most programs tell you a pitch deck should be and how it should look. What we're doing today when I do it is putting it in the lens of storytelling. So it's the same things that you're responding to, but you're putting it in the lens of storytelling, okay? So this simple framework that you see on the screen, I believe it covers all the hot spots, is what I call them, the hot spots of a deck. So there are many areas that you could cover, but it should always answer these 3 questions. No matter what area we're talking about, it should answer these 3 questions. If you can build a story to answer each of these questions properly, I almost have no doubt, and I say almost because investors are unpredictable, I almost have no doubt that you will have a successful deck in front of you, that you will have an impressive deck in front of you. So the 3 questions that you want to think about from the lens of your audience, in this case, most cases, it's the investor, is why should I care? Why should I believe? And why should I join? And we'll go through each of those in just a second now. But those are the 3. So let's talk about why should I care? So think about it like this. Your company needs to be bigger than the specific problem that your product or your service solves. Your company needs to be bigger than the specific problem that your product or service solves. What does that mean, Magali? Right? Like, what does that even mean? What it means is that you need to speak to a bigger picture and a bigger value to the world. So let's look at the mission of some companies that some would consider valuable, right? So Square, everybody's familiar with Square, right? Square sells credit card readers. But if you ask the leadership at Square, they'll say what they do is enable everyone to participate and thrive in the economy. That they don't say we sell credit card readers or whatever I say. Yeah, credit card readers. That's what they'll say. We enable everyone to participate and thrive in the economy. Again, your company needs to be bigger than the specific problem your product solves or your service solves. So think about it on a higher level than just somebody asks you what you do, what problem you're solving. Think higher first, then you can follow up with something more literal, like we do that by selling credit card readers, you know? But you think of it from a higher level. Because if you really think about it, again, in the example of Square, when you're trying to attract investment or talent, because this even works when you're trying to hire people, trying to attract investment or talent, what do you think would sound more exciting to people? Do you really think an investor would be more excited about a credit card reader? Or do you think they'll be more excited about enabling everyone to thrive in the economy? I would venture to say it's the latter. And the reason I'm making that distinction and that point to you all, I forgot about my Zoom audience, I'm talking to the room. The reason I'm making that distinction to you all is truly because you're selling a story. You're telling a story. So in telling the story, you have to make it more attractive. So we're enabling everyone to thrive in the economy. We're not just selling credit card readers. So you think about it that way. Another example, because I think the problem is very important. A lot of times we don't know the problem we're solving, or we don't know how to put it in storytelling format. And that's the first step of owning a business. You have to be solving a problem, okay? That's the first step in your pitch deck. So that means that's the first step in storytelling. For those that was with us in week 1, we talked about movies. Like in movies, we're intrigued to figure out what happens at the end, right? Yeah. We're super intrigued to figure out what happens in the end, because in the beginning somewhere, there was a problem. Somebody needed saving, or we needed these 2 people to fall in love, or whatever the movie was about. So it's the same concept. You have to have that problem. So another example is LinkedIn. So we talked about Square. Think about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a social network for professionals at its core. That's what they do. And they were created mostly to serve recruiters, primarily. That's what LinkedIn was created to do. But if you talk to LinkedIn and you ask them what they're doing, LinkedIn will, and I'm quoting these people, y'all, I'm not making these statements up. LinkedIn will tell you that they are connecting the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful. We're connecting the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful. Again, your company needs to be bigger than the specific problem that your product or service solves. That's exactly what simple answers like that do. Because yeah, it's a social network for professionals, and connecting the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful, literally the same thing. One just tells a story. You understand what I'm doing here? You all see the difference? So by how you get to that more descriptive way is thinking about your company as bigger than just a problem you're solving. Like ultimately, what is this doing, right? I want to give you one more example, then we move on to the second question. Actually, I don't know, time may not be on my side. Okay, we'll skip the third example, but just at the end of the day, just think of just every successful company that you can think of. You'll probably see something very similar with how they pitch their problem. Because to be honest, when you're thinking about pitching your problem, why should we care? No one really cares about another marketplace. No one really cares. These are just examples. No one really cares about a recruiter platform. No one really cares how you're using AI to optimize XYZ, or another version of Uber to do WXY, right? Is that the right order? Anyways, XYZ, ABC, we'll go ABC, or Uber to do ABC. What they really care about is which meaningful problem you solve. Like that's really, you kind of put it in a nutshell that way. So even if you have a company in one of the examples that I just used that folks don't really care about, that I say don't care about, you need to start thinking about it as your company being bigger than that problem and how you present that in the problem. So pitch deck, first thing you're doing is identifying the problem. And you make it sexy the way I just did with some of those examples, okay? That's generally what's happening here. And trying to follow the cookie cutter version, that's typically the first 2 to 3 slides of your pitch deck, okay? Typically the first 2 to 3 slides of your pitch deck is when you're talking about the problem, is when you're telling them why you should care, okay? And that's important before I move on to the next question. That's important because in order to move on to the next part of the pitch deck, you need to capture them in your problem. They need to care about what it is that you say you are solving. They need to care about whatever it is that your company does. Again, I use the example of bows, and I use the example of like fluffy pillows for a cat. Like make it important. Tell them what the problem is. Do the data, do the research, identify the problem, okay? And make it sexy. All right. Why should I believe? And I'll move into the next slide to talk about why should I believe, and I'm doing good on time. We got that. Okay. And then we'll come back to why should I join? So why should I believe? All right. This is a whole lot. I'm gonna talk a lot, but I put a little bit on the screen. Thank God we're recording. So after you get people to care, what really comes into your pitch deck is what I consider the meat of the presentation, okay? In the first couple of slides of this part, you're really focused on convincing the audience, convincing the investor that you can actually solve the problem that you just said exists. So you finally pull them in and they realize, wow, that is something that needs attention, or that needs help, or that needs solving. So now you're trying to convince them that you and your company you're the one to solve the problem, and you just need $1 million from them to do it, okay? That's what we're doing. And you're doing this through storytelling. And that's where the why should I believe come in. You're really just pulling at those heartstrings with data. So how do you do that? So these are the areas, I'll talk about each of these areas briefly that you see scattered across the screen here. And I'll go through it quickly. So if you have questions, again, stop me because you know I talk a lot. So solution, that's the first one you want to think about. So here We're not thinking about not what your product does, but which problem your product solves. What are you fixing in the world? So we talked about what the problem is. So how are you solving it, right? So with bows, I can't seem to find my ponytail over. See, somebody thought about this. Oh, okay. So hair bows, hair things like that. What a perfect example. You know, people with hair on their head, you know, whether it's a ponytail, whether it's a rubber band, whether if that's the reason all of these things exist, sometimes we need to pull it all together, right? Somebody recognized that as a problem. Somebody recognizes we needed something. So somebody probably once created, what is this called? Whatever, ponytail holders. But then they had a competitor that said, you know what, I want something smaller. I'm gonna create rubber bands. And then somebody else said, oh, but people want something pretty. I'm gonna create ribbons. I'm gonna make them colorful. Like, that's why we have all these options. And that's quick, you know, and believe it or not, we buy all of them, right? So that's a simple example, like sharing how you're gonna solve the problem, right? That's what you're doing when you're talking about solution. How are you gonna solve the problem? Whether you're creating a rubber band, so let me try to use a service example. People find it very hard, I'll talk about marketing outside the box, to market their business. How do we solve the problem? We offer free marketing classes. Simple, right? So don't overthink the solution. What you're overthinking is how you're different from other people who might be doing it. That's what you're overthinking, okay? I would never tell you to downplay that part. How are you better than your competitors? My answer is I'm authentic. I don't tell you. You're gonna get me 100%, right? Okay, so you had a question? Okay, so solution. The next thing is why now? So we're still in that why should I believe category. Why should they believe you? You provided them a solution. Now you need to explain to them why is now a good time for the solution? Why is now the perfect time to solve the problem? Why hasn't it been solved before? You know, why is it different? What's so different about this? There's typically a reason to address that. Address that. So there's typically a reason why now is the time. There's a reason why now is the time you decided to solve the problem that you're solving. Share that. That's part of the story. Most times there's a story even built into why now. You were crossing the street, your hair started raining or your hair blew in the wind and it blocked your eyes. You almost got hit by a car and you realized you needed that hair bow. Listen, that hair bow story is coming together, okay? But either way, it's just always a why now. There's an opportunity to do that. And the story doesn't have to be the way I just shared it. It could be anything. I'm kind of a dramatic person, but you know what I mean? Just address why now. And what's really important in the why now category is what I said before. Why hasn't it been solved before? This is your competitive advantage, right? So whatever it is that your business do, even if there are similar businesses out there, you obviously created yours because you're doing something different. So what is it that you're doing different? Did you still build that into your why now? Okay, you still build into your why now. The next category, I really just have it in there because I'm giving you all the simple formula. Remember, I'm not a fan of pitch decks, but either way, the technology or product category. We live in a world where technology seems to be part of every business. And if it's a part of yours, you want to make sure that you put it in there. And you also want to let them know what your product or service is. I seem to only put the word product there, but /service. Product/service. You want to let them know what that is. That needs to be in your pitch deck. Because if you say that the problem is the people need stuff to hold their hair, sticking with that same story, people need the things to hold their hair. You're solving this problem by providing some version of a hair bow or hair tie. Now they need to see it. How does this function? So there's elastic around, and then in the elastic you put cloth so it doesn't pull at their hair. Okay, I'm starting to see this product now. So the product needs to be in there. And in some cases, the technology, in 2022, technology is probably embedded in there somewhere, possibly, but it's not necessary, okay? But how I suggest you embed technology in your pitch deck, because remember, we're talking about a physical presentation here. whether it's flipping pages or whether it's on a screen, go ahead and provide screenshots. It saves you from typing a lot of words. Let people see it. Provide screenshots. Or share the customer journey with it. When you get to that, this is what happens. This is why people like it. It's quick, simple, takes them less than a second to put on their head, right? Share the customer journey. And don't feel pressure to get, don't feel pressure to stick to like 1 or 2 slides, because that's what you'll hear a lot. I'm saying these things about the number of slides because people like to put a cap on pitch deck slides. We'll typically hear people say, don't go over 10 slides. I'm not going against those people, but my way is better. Authentic, just be authentic. Feel free to use 2 to 3 slides to really get them, just that's storytelling. Get people to see it, get people to say, oh, wow. Because just seeing a picture, then we're like, so, okay, so what's that little latch on your boat? What's the purpose of that? This is what gets investors or whoever your audience engaged. Storytelling, believe it or not, that's storytelling. Next, your go-to-market strategy. What your go-to-market strategy means, basically all you're doing is you're telling your audience, how are you going to win? Going back to, not to focus on competitors in that way, but this is why I'm going to win. This is why I will be successful, right? That's what your go-to-market strategy is. So you're going to show them your path, how you plan to get there, right? And most investors know, and I think most of us know, you're not going to become a $1 billion business in a day. So it's not, you're going to wake up, you had this great idea, tomorrow you'll be rolling in dough. There's going to be a journey. So how do you envision that journey? You share that in your pitch deck story. Okay? You let them know that. And then really when you're talking about that journey and telling that story about your go-to-market, really think about, especially if you're an early business and this might be your first time pitching to an investor, like really focus on how you are going to monopolize, I shouldn't use that word, but monopolize a particular market, right? So in sticking with the hair goals, you might first want to monopolize women with curly hair, with long curly hair. That might be who you want to monopolize first. So that means your marketing will be focused on those women. That means your images. That means the people you talk to when you're doing testing. You put all of that. This is my path. This is my go-to-market strategy. So whatever your business is, have a go-to-market strategy and you put it in that pitch deck as part of your story of your business for the pitch deck story. Okay? That makes sense? I have one in there twice. Thank you. I will correct that before I send it to y'all. Thank you. I will correct it before I send it to y'all. He told me I have the word these in there, so I like him. I like people that correct me. Thank you. So then next I'll go to validation, traction, and momentum. This is a very important part that takes many first-time business owners, first-time founders. It's a thing that a lot of people fail to include in their pitch deck story. I talked a little bit about your go-to-market strategy and how you plan to test it. Really, this is very similar. But in order to make your audience, in order to make the investors believe your story, you need to show them that the market, the people who you say you're going to sell this to, you need to show them that they believe it as well. They believe that you have something, right? So that means that you have to go out there and test it. That's why you see so many times people give away free products, because they need to know that people are going to use it. Same concept, or you'll see, let's just say if it's a masseuse, they'll be offering free services or reduced cost services because they need to know, they need that data. That's what typically in a pitch deck, when you see people say, what's the validation or what's your traction or what's the momentum, that's what they're talking about, okay? And a lot of times when you're early in business in the beginning, this is the most difficult part of your pitch deck story to share or to figure out, because sometimes we just don't have it yet. You have to go out and get it. And we're not going to talk about it today, but last month, was branding last month? Last month during the branding topic of marketing outside the box, we showed you some ways to do that. We talked about how you go and get that data with your brand, okay? So we won't go into it too much. Find the video, ask us questions later if you need it. Okay, and then the last one that I want to talk about is your competitors and your team. I really should separate those two. But about the competitors, this one should pretty much be self-explanatory, because first of all, I've been talking about your competitors all day with your pitch deck. But what I would say about your competitors' point of view is that a lot of people use this matrix. There's a competitive analysis matrix. Feel free to use it. Or you can incorporate your competitors in your story. You may not need to have a visual, but you're talking about your competitors. A lot of people think they don't have competitors. We don't have time right now for me to tell you that you do, for me to explain to you that you all have competitors, because some people think they are just that unique. You have competitors. You are unique. You are special. We love you, but you have competitors, okay? In business, you always have competitors. So, and your investors know that, and you need to let them know where you stand in comparison to your competitors. That matrix is great. I'm not saying don't use it. It's a safe way to go if you're going to cookie cutter version, okay? So by all means do it. And then I talked about team in the previous options. And I thought this was a crucial piece of your deck. So I won't talk about it again. Just make sure you showcase your team. Just remember what I said before, make sure you showcase this team. What I will say about your presentation itself is that you want to make sure that you kind of put your team closer to the end of your deck. You talk about them closer to the end of telling that story. Why? Because you want it to stay on their minds. Because what did I say? They invest in people more than anything. So you want them to connect to that. It doesn't absolutely have to be your last slide, but what you will notice with most pitch decks, if you go afterwards and look at some examples online, it's most people's last slide. Following that format, it is most people's last slide or second to last, but sometimes the last slide is how to contact us on the slide. But either way, so just keep that in mind to make that connection. I know. So the last thing I want to say on this slide about the why you should believe is don't bore people with these titles that I have here. These titles are for you to think about what needs to be in the pitch deck. I mean, you will see pitch decks that have some of these exact titles. Telling a story, you're going to lose people. You know, just make sure these things are in your pitch deck. But you don't have to say it in this particular way in a storytelling format, okay? So going back to this slide, why should I join? Did I talk about everything on that last slide? Yes, right? Why should you join? These are typically your last few slides. And all it is, really, y'all, it's about the money. That's really what that last part of your pitch deck is about. You're asking them, you're telling them how much money you've made already, even if it's zero. Like you're being very clear about that. You're showing them the various things from that point of view, but more importantly, you're asking them for how much money you need. You know, so you set up this beautiful story, no matter which format you chose. You set up this beautiful story because in the pitch deck storytelling, the ultimate goal, like I said in the beginning, you are trying to raise funds for your company. So this is different than the elevator pitch that we talked about. This is different than the origin story. And this is different than what we're going to talk about next week. So this is really the only storytelling format that's focused on you getting money for your business, okay? From investors. I need to keep saying for investors because somebody might just decide to donate, right? And you don't have to follow this format. Key things that I want to point out before we close out, and if we have time for question is, it's very important that your pitch deck can live on its own. Meaning you wouldn't have to be there to pitch it for somebody to fully follow the story. So when you're creating that, think about that. Don't always think about it in terms of you're going to be standing there delivering it. Because sometimes you're just sending it to somebody. Or you delivered it to somebody, but they're going to send it to somebody else. It needs to still make sense to them. They need to be able to still follow your story in that pitch deck based on the things we shared today. Okay? Think about it this way. I think I put it on the final slide. Think about it this way. The clearer your message is, the more repeatable it'll be to others. So when you're telling your story via a pitch deck, Make it very clear, make it very easy for somebody to say, wow, I just learned about this company. This is how they got started. This is where they're going and how they plan to get there. And this is how much they need to get there. Like, make it very clear for them, okay? So 3 final tips, and then I promise you I'm done, that I want you to think about when you're doing your pitch deck, and I think it just helps. And these tricks, if you use these tricks in a pitch deck, only use it once per presentation, okay? Don't keep doing it throughout your presentation because then it's not effective. So the first one is saying that your company takes the best features of A and of B, and it builds on that knowledge to your audience. That helps you truly make a point. So, you know, Uber says something like, we take the best of getting people from point A to point B and safety. I don't know if they say that, I'm making that up, but that's an example of what I mean, like taking the best of one thing and the best of the other. And this is why your company is great. So you're comparing it again, sometimes to your competitors, to what already exists, and said, this is why we are good. So you can use that example in your storytelling. Another quick tip is, and this is really, I encourage you to use this when you're really trying to get a very important message across to whoever's listening. Believe it or not, whisper it in your pitch. When you're storytelling, whisper the most important thing that you're trying to get across. Now, you still want to whisper it loud enough for them to hear you. So you still want them to hear the words that are coming out of your mouth. But what this does is it really makes people focus on what you're saying, and they realize you're saying something significant. So the most important thing you want them to know, the tip is whisper it during your pitch deck. And then my final tip to you, and you can say something along these lines, it doesn't have to be necessarily this. When you're doing a pitch and you're storytelling, pitch deck storytelling, say this to people. If you don't remember anything else I said today, just remember this, and then say whatever your key message is. Okay, that's another tip in your pitch deck, in your storytelling format. If you don't remember anything else I said today, just remember this and just say whatever it is that you want them to remember. Okay, it'll stay on their mind. Again, the clearer your message is, the more repeatable it'll be to others. So lastly, what I'll say, because I've been focusing on slide decks, you will learn as you research this on your own. If you don't already have an existing slide deck and you start to create your own and do your own research, you'll see a lot of times it says decks should not be more than 10 slides. Now, because you're not coming for me for money, feel free to follow that method. But there are so many million dollar companies out there that did not have 10 slides, okay? So don't feel limited, because this is what will matter in the mindset of storytelling your pitch deck. Most people, investors and entrepreneurs combined, would prefer to have a more clean, focused set of slides than 10 slides that's overloaded and messy. And you can't even figure out what they're trying to communicate. That does not tell a good story. So if your story requires that you have 15 slides, believe it or not, when I say this next number, 50 slides, then do so. I mean, you're gonna have to get through it quickly because most of them only give you 15 minutes or less. But it doesn't make sense to try to put all of those elements that I just told you that answers these 3 questions in 10 slides. It can be done, and there are formulas out there for it. So if you feel more comfortable, follow those formulas. But when you're thinking about it from a storytelling lens, and storytelling is how you get money, storytelling is how you get people to believe in your business, my suggestion is you do what is best for your business, even if that means more than 10 slides. Okay? I think I'm done. Yes. So next week, and I know we're a little over time, or are we right on time? We're 3 minutes over time, so if you have to go, I understand. Next week, we are closing out with the internal story. And again, you can go to our pages to see the elevator pitch, the origin story, and of course, today we went through the pitch deck. Next week, we are closing with the last method that we think is best for storytelling for entrepreneurs. Have a great rest of the week. I hope this was helpful to each of you. And if you have questions, I can stick around on Zoom for another minute or 2. I mean, if you have to go, I definitely understand. And I'm going to stop the recording. Stop sharing. There weren't any questions.